thank you very much for coming back after the coffee, for a start. I now have the pleasure to introduce you to Guy Gillan, Director of Travel at PricewaterhouseCoopers, who's going to chair our panel on the challenges in travel. Guy, again, just to reiterate Robin's introduction at the start, he's a hugely respected advisor to the travel sector, has a deep knowledge of the travel industry, has also worked for brands such as Mark Warner in the past. So I'll pass you on to Guy Gillan. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Slightly oversold there, never mind. Bit of introductory about me. The sort of day job I have is either merging companies or helping companies acquire, or in this last year, slightly focused on recovering, on restructuring companies. And we've been as busy now as we were a couple of years ago in the boom. Undoubtedly, throughout the space, people are finding it more challenging or slightly easier depending on where they sit. Certainly the airlines and the hoteliers that are capital intense and have got that fixed cost commitment are finding it somewhat challenging. But it's clear that there's a number of travel operators that are really thriving in the industry. We see a number of companies also sort of stopping still and scratching their heads and saying, well, what does this mean to us and where are we going to take it? And actually, whilst they're stopping still, the technology and the media is not stopping and it's moving on and actually, as was talked about earlier, going at a hell of a pace. So this morning we've had highlights from some of the major operators, TUI, yesterday Thomas Cook, both of which impressing the importance of online travel to us. So it's becoming really relevant. So today's session is actually trying to focus on what the future means for us, and I'm going to be the boring person and say, well, actually, what does that mean for kind of hard cash and actually having successful businesses? So it gives me great pleasure to introduce the panel, and I'll get them to talk about themselves because, frankly, they know more about them than I do. So firstly, it's Caroline from Euromonitor.
Hello, I'm the Director of Travel at Euromonitor International. And today I'll be doing a short presentation about UK outbound and just how bad has it actually got over the last year and what are the predictions for the next 5 years. So that will come up shortly.
Russell Gould, the founder as of pretty much about 2 weeks ago of eStrategyConsultancy.com. Previously was the head of e-commerce for Thomas Cook, and before that, MyTravel. And I've had the luxury of being on holiday for the last 3 months, enjoying my family. So it's a pleasure to be here.
Very generous.
Hi, my name is Tamer Tamar. I currently head up eBookers, president for eBookers. I've been spending about the last 5 years with mostly with Expedia in online travel. And I'm going to talk to you a bit about emotional engagement today. It's been covered already a couple of times in the panels.
I'm Danny Barrasso. I work for Hilton Worldwide. I look after the e-commerce services team for the EMEA region. I think what I'm going to talk about today is more about how we can embrace technology to drive more business through the internet.
Karen, would you mind sort of setting the scene for us for the latest trends that you're seeing, please? Sure.
Right, so basically I've been asked today to talk about UK outbound and just its performance over the last year. So first of all, I'd just like to put that in context of the economic crisis. In blue, you can see the line for GDP, real GDP growth over the last year and the forecast. And it's contracted very badly by 4%. We all know we're in the throes of a global recession of unprecedented proportions. And this has hit the UK market particularly hard. When you look at the impact on travel itself, it has been magnified. And we're expecting UK outbound departures to contract by over 10% this year, with spending falling even faster by over 11%. So this shows that UK consumers are either stopping travel or they're postponing their travel, and we're expecting a bit of possible pent-up demand as we move forward. And this has also led to a change in the destinations that consumers are opting for. So there's been a bit of trading down, I suppose, or shifting in terms of their preferences. Because of this, the low pound against the euro and the dollar, you can see that destinations such as Spain have actually suffered very badly. and we're expecting a decline of 16% this year. Whereas other destinations such as Turkey and Egypt in the mid-haul are experiencing a bit of a boost. And this is supported by figures, Turkey's up by 9% and Egypt's up by 6%. So in this current climate, that is a very good performance. And actually, I would say China's a bit of a star performer. It's starting from a very low base, but it's definitely one to watch in the future. And this has also been boosted by the positive image that the Beijing Olympics created last year. Critical to outbound tourism flows are obviously the low-cost carriers and the schedule carriers. And traditionally in the UK market, the schedule carriers have dominated. However, we're expecting a shift, and by 2011, low-cost carriers are going to usurp the schedule carriers and account for the majority share of passengers carried. So that's a fairly serious shift in terms of what that means in terms of travel and how you deal with the airlines themselves. However, what's important to also recognize is that spending at low-cost carriers is much lower. So although they'll account for 40%, they will only reach 15% of value sales because of the inherent nature of their low-cost prices. Now looking across the travel retail market itself, so this is sales through online and offline agents and operators. In 2009, we're seeing that package holidays continued to be the dominant share, accounting for, yes, just over £10 billion. And this has actually performed quite well in the current crisis. It's experienced a decline of about 5%. However, in terms of the overall market, that's actually quite good. And you can see that the worst hit over the last year have been accommodation-only sales, flight-only, and the more premium products such as adventure and trekking. Now, just taking a quick look at the online universe itself. On the left there, you've got the split between direct suppliers, so the hotels, the airlines, and then the intermediaries. And the interesting thing about the UK market is we have a market dominated by the direct suppliers, and they actually continue to outpace the online travel agents. So transport, for example, led by the likes of Ryanair and EasyJet, accounting for 50 or 60% of the market. And then on the right there, you have the split of the intermediaries by the different segments. So flight-only and package holidays accounting for the largest share. And we're not expected to see much shift over the next 5 years. These are some of the trends that we've picked up on as key sort of innovation in the market, which we presented at the World Travel Market. The first off, we've got the pop-up hotels, which I think is a very interesting concept, considering hotels are fixed, permanent assets, whereas a pop-up hotel gives a hotel operator more flexibility and can adjust to peaks and troughs in demand. Then next up, we've got the nano breaks. Everybody's talking about, later and later bookings at the 11th hour, but also the fact that breaks are also needing to be shorter and sharper, and these kind of de-stressing power breaks. Also, we have operators looking at and refreshing the traditional demographic groups, such as women, going back and having another look at that kind of demographic and seeing how they can target them more effectively. And then another area we've seen particularly driven by the UK is the masstige services. So these are luxury products for the masses. For example, Virgin Holidays have rolled out a luxury concierge service. Well, traditionally they're for the luxury travelers, but they've rolled it out to all their customers for free, including budget holiday makers. So this is a case of ripping up the rule book and starting again. And then finally, in all the doom and gloom, we actually have some optimists who are seeking fun employment. So using their redundancy packages and making the most of that newfound wealth, even though it's temporary, and jetting off and taking advantage of the great deals, for example, 20, 30% discounts that you'll probably never see again in the travel industry. So these are just some of the areas we've identified, and I sort of pass you over to the panel to discuss the future of travel. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. That's really interesting. One of the things that I'd like to talk about there, you've seen you talked about travel retail segment, which was closing in. So Russell, we've seen that travel's a growth segment. So if retail's closing in, what part is technology placing on the agent in that sector?
I think where it's difficult for an agent now is technology basically empowers the consumer. You know, a consumer now has more information when they go in and see the agent than ever before. And I think that means that the agent needs to really know their stuff. They can't lie or they can't make stuff up, and they need to be up to speed with exactly what's happening in the destinations that they're going to talk to the customer about.
Danny, that's got to be good news for a brand owner who wants to take more of the margin from the customer. So how can you maximise that trend, and what technologies would you use to sort of utilise that?
I think it's first to point out that from a hotel perspective, our DNA is hospitality. Well, you know, nearly 90 years old, and the internet was unheard of, 30, 40 years ago. So for Hilton, as a sleeping giant, we've had to embrace technology. And I think typically for tour operators and for hotel businesses, we're used to using legacy systems that were built 10, 15 years ago, which are harder to integrate when you want to do dynamic pricing, you want real-time pricing as opposed to using a cache. So at Hilton, we've tried to focus on rebuilding our web platform so we can better engage into our revenue management systems to deliver better pricing to our users. And we still don't do it as well as we want to today. I think one of our big focuses over the next 12 months is to re-look at how we price products and how we get that product and execute it online as fast as possible. And in terms of the challenges, I mean, I also worked at Thomas Cook many years ago, and integrating into old legacy tour operator systems, it was always really difficult, and there's no cheap and easy solution to do that effectively. So I think it's where the new pure play travel brands like Expedia took over the market 7 years ago when all the tour operators weren't that active online. And you had all the startup companies like Last Minute, Expedia, who are building pretty much new technology and found better ways of interfacing into these legacy systems. So I think the challenge really is how you incorporate and build technology fast, and how you incorporate that into, obviously, legacy travel systems.
So, Tamer, in that slide didn't necessarily paint a good picture for e-bookers as an agent. So how do you fight back against that and gain some market share if that is a sort of declining?
Yeah. I mean, I guess we see it as not capturing market share, but capturing trust of the customers. Because if you do that, good things will follow, market share will follow as well. For us, and I'm sure for other online travel agencies, one of the important things is how do you actually emotionally engage with the customers? We've talked about it in the previous panels as well. Getting emotional engagement is not something we do that well as online travel players, not just agents, but suppliers as well. And my feeling is that if you look outside of the travel industry, if you look at companies like Amazon, whereby they actually get that trust, get that emotional engagement by making recommendations that are relevant. Now, if you go to a typical online travel, whether it's agency or supplier site, you see a lot of deals thrown out. Now, you don't necessarily know whether they are the right deals for the customer or not. Whereas when you go to Amazon, and if you've ever bought something from them, even if you haven't, you get some relevant experience. For us, for e-bookers, and I'm sure for the other online travel players as well, that is one of the more important things, I'd say. Now, the second part is, again, part of the emotional engagement. You have to cater to the senses. Now, I think this is a more futuristic view. But there's a company called Like.com in the US. And what they have is they have different types of products such as jewelry, watches, and purses. And you go in there and you look at a certain product such as a watch, and you define whether you like the design of it, the color of it, the form of it. And based on what part of that product you liked, it actually comes up with recommendations for you for similar type of watches. And you can really define your criteria. It really caters to the senses. And the way it could be potentially used in the travel space is in the hotel space. So if you like a certain type of room, instead of saying boutique hotel in the filter, because boutique hotel means something different to everyone, you want to make sure you actually define your criteria by your visual senses. Now, I think we're a bit further away from that, but in the future, that's going to be something that's important. On a more basic premise, Again, how do you cater for the emotional engagement or the senses? We recently at eBookers, for example, launched chat functionality. So depending on how much time a customer spends on the site and what part of the site, a chat pop-up can come up and says, it seems like you're having some difficulty here. Now, it could be seen as a bit too intrusive, but a lot of customers actually like that type of service. So instead of having to call a call center and potentially waiting more than they want to, they can have that functionality right there. And it's all about catering to their trust, catering to their, the emotional needs as well. And this is something that I think we can learn a lot from outside the travel industry.
I think isn't the challenge like Amazon and Light.com, they're talking about tangible goods like books and watches and cars that you can take away and keep with you, and they're not perishable, whereas the holiday is an emotive and it's experience, and it's a perishable purchase. And there's a certain amount of skepticism from the consumer that you, eBookers, want to sell it because you're going to get a margin, and you, Hilton, want me in the hotel because it hits your profit. So how do you get over that, sort of building that faith and trust?
I mean, you can combine it with potentially customers' views, right? So you don't have to be the one who actually says, I like this hotel. A very basic example is if you're a family with 2 children, you just look at the reviews written by a family with 2 children. Yeah. So you're not actually using editorial advice. Yeah. You're using customers' reviews and what people like you have seen. It's pretty basic. Yeah. Now, you can take it up a notch. And again, like I said, you look at the photographs of a hotel and say, that's the kind of art I like in the room. That's the terrace I like. That's the view I like. And try to find an algorithm that actually makes the recommendations based on those photographs.
Yeah. So, Russell, how can we move that up a scale? Because we've seen earlier on TripAdvisor, allegedly the first one was from the hotelier, the second one was from the hotelier next door. So how can we move that sort of customer recommendation along? Is the answer Twitter to us all, or?
I think it's very much about real time. I think there's 2 parts here. I'm just going on from what Tamer went through there. There is, the customer experience when they're on that digital platform, whether it's your mobile, whether it's your website, and how you're engaging with that customer. And if you're doing it in such a way that you're actually talking to that customer by presenting things that they are actually interested in or that better reflect them, you're taking the whole journey an incredible step forward from the old way of doing it. So, for example, some of the things that Thomas Cook have been doing is personalizing some of the content based on what they know about the customer. Yeah. So if they know the last time you came to the website, you searched for a family holiday, they will change some of the imagery when you next come to the website, so it's more family orientated. They will take some of the products that they presented and present it more in a family orientated manner. Now, straight away, what that's going to do is increase the likelihood of the consumer having some affiliation with that website and going further down the journey. Then when you layer on top of that real-time information about that particular hotel from Google, from Twitter, from Facebook, or from wherever, you're taking the consumer even further down the journey, because suddenly it's not just the organization saying, this is a good place. It's real time. People who are there now possibly saying, this is a good place. This is what we're doing there right now. And I think we're only just touching on the power of what that can do at this point in time. And I think there's some clever tools coming out already, which I think will take it much, much further and empower the consumer to make very informed decisions around the particular product that they want.
It's really compelling, isn't it, when you've got somebody who you think is like-minded. So if you're on Twitter and you're following somebody who you think represents something about you as an individual and they're recommending, it's really powerful, both in a positive and negative way. So it's similarly if the person you're following absolutely hates your product and slams it, but yet you've given that person resonance. How does a big brand like Hilton control that, Danny?
It's really difficult, and I think Fergus touched on it from Virgin, that the consumer has so much power and the freedom of speech online. And it's difficult for a brand to act emotionally to any negative feedback. And I think how we need to manage it moving forward is have set guidelines on how you engage with customers through a set channel, so you don't be derogative about your own brand or about customers' comments. And I think it's to always ensure that you're trying to understand why the customer acted in that emotional way. It might have been through bad service. It might have been through dissatisfaction of a type of room they were given when they checked in, or not being able to get their room card as quickly as possible, as Patrick Dixon talked about earlier. And I think if we started being emotional and engaging with people, and Matt said earlier, there's 5,000 tweets, I think, a second. I mean, there's a lot of people having the conversation online, and there's a way and means on how you engage. Hilton's developed a series of guidelines on how we ask our hotel general managers to respond to complaints, positive feedback or complaints through TripAdvisor. And I think it's about making sure you don't wear your heart on your sleeve and you're not emotional. And it's having guidelines to support the customer if they've had a bad experience, trying to understand or get them to feedback directly and on TripAdvisor through the management feedback section to try and fix the problem, so we can proactively be seen on TripAdvisor to be replying to customers who have had posted negative feedback. In turn, that gives you a positive impact within their rankings also. So it's being seen to be doing something about it, as opposed to turning a blind eye and not responding to these people. So I think long term, and someone earlier touched on it, that if you do nothing, your brand is almost, the equity you have in your brand is being eroded because you're just not engaging in this big conversation that's happening online. I think there are ways and means to engage, and it's setting up the structure and the resource enabled to do that.
Yeah. And for e-bookers?
I would actually completely agree with that. And what's going on right now is when a customer buys something from an agency or supplier, it doesn't really matter who they buy it from anymore, because they assign the benefit and the blame to across the supply chain. For example, I remember a couple of years ago when we looked at car rental companies, and as someone went to an online travel agency and booked a car and they were not happy with the cleanliness of the car, they assigned half of the blame to the online travel agency and half of it to the car rental supplier. So you just basically have to step up and accept the blame as you accept the praise as an online travel agency as well. So in our case, even our CEO, Barney Harford, gets involved in answering complaints in blogs and sometimes YouTube as well. So that's very important. The other thing I would say is, just a personal anecdote, about 2 years ago, we went to Havana, and I personally chose a hotel that had bad as well as good comments. And apparently, according to TripAdvisor as well, the ones that are chosen the most, that are transacted the most, are the ones with a balanced ratio of positive and negative reviews. Yeah. Now, how an online travel agency can affect that? Well, we can affect it when we do mistakes. Everyone can make mistakes. If you make one mistake, that's fine, but if you make the same mistake again, that's when the problem is. So whenever we make a mistake, we have institutional ways of going around it by increasing customer service, by escalating it up as well. So because, like I said, the praise as well as the guilt lies with all parties now.
The power of the real time is amazing. So you talked about car cleanliness there. All you need is 2 or 3 of those to come through in the same day, and you've got a problem. You can go and fix it straight away. And it's incredibly powerful if you get it right. And so you have to tap into it. You can't afford to sit back and not be involved in this. It is happening all around us, and we're doing it, and our customers are doing it. You really have to get involved. I mean, I saw a great presentation the other day from the guys at Dell, who have really embraced and created a whole team that specifically look at this, and they're actually changing the products that they make based on what they're getting in feedback from Twitter and social networks. And they're selling more product as a result by understanding where customers have problems with the products that they're making. And I think it's incredibly powerful if you do get it right.
And the companies that we see really embracing this technology and actually driving it forward are often startups, new young companies, and Zumbu and stuff we saw earlier. And they kind of don't have as much to risk. They're sort of small, and they're actually sort of using it as an ability to get sort of further voice. You can talk in a way because you're not part of a big organisation at the moment. So how do you get that challenge where your chief executive is absolutely nervous about you having an opinion, being anything other than vanilla, and then getting that transferred into making yourself sort of pertinent on live feeds such as those?
I don't want to incriminate myself here in answering this.
Go on, do so.
But I think the difference between startups and some of the big branded organizations is typically the startup have got people who are into this technology and they're actually doing it, whereas some of your big brands, the senior guys are too busy doing other things. I mean, I read an article the other day about one of the tour operator CEOs who doesn't answer his own emails because he pays somebody to do it. Yeah. Now, could you imagine that individual twittering or getting on Facebook or responding to customers' Twitters? And I think the thing about it is you've got to be so careful now as a big brand that you do portray the right message when your employees or customers comment about you. Yeah. You need to be there and you need to be really careful how you do it. So like Hilton having a structured policy in place and I'm sure approved people who can get engaged is a start, because it's going to happen whether you like it or not. So create a policy and set yourself up to support it so that you limit the damage. I think a small startup, you can kind of do what you like, because sometimes the controversy is good.
I was just going to say, it's also very important to realise that you can't replace technology. So I think it's a case of adding to the mix, if you agree. So, for example, I've got Hilton Honours, which is the loyalty programme. And so that's a unique user group who are interested already in the brand and get some benefit back from the brand. And so you can engage with them, but equally you can be going into the wider web arena and tapping into new users or potential users. So I think it's a case of having that balance.
Yeah, I think it's the loyalty programs are great for corporates because it allows you to measure your spend and you can sort of equate what your return on capital is. And that's, I think, some of the challenges that I see for the big companies embracing this technology. So I think later on we've got some developments in Google, but once we can get analytics to start picking up on the social media, so it's live networking and such like that, then we can actually be able to put in front of boards and FDs and you can show the return on capital that it derives, or more importantly, the sustainability of profit, and that should hopefully get them to release their reins somewhat on the corporates having a personality. On the cost of it, how do you measure the cost, Tamara, of what you're doing? How do you get comfortable? There's lots, pay-per-click is such a dominant area of the market, and where do you decide what's a good return on that, and where do you drive for sort of customer-generated content, etc.?
Yeah. I guess the first and foremost for us is, what is our objective? Is our objective to bring new users? Is our objective to increase the retention? Because depending on what your objective is, your marketing channel optimization is completely different. Yeah. I believe, for example, meta search is not a great way of bringing new customers in the long term. I believe a lot of it is duplicate. Now, in certain geographies, you still have to be pragmatic and depend on that. In other geographies, if that's your goal, that's a difficult one. So we actually look at each channel differently in terms of the type of bars we put on return on investment. Yeah. So you need to really understand whether bidding on a keyword, even if it is your own keyword on eBookers, is going to result in that customer in 5 days seeing the eBookers brand and then doing a hotel search and then bringing you something else. Now, this is the whole multi-click attribution model that I think nobody has been able to solve just yet. But to be able to take advantage of the arbitrage and really bid, whether it's PPC, whether it's giving commissions to the affiliates, you need to understand the step of the way when customers take before they do the booking. So I would say the short answer to your question is we can't really have a one-size-fits-all for a marketing channel. We have to really first look at the objective and then look at each channel in terms of their bars for returns.
Danny, how do you approach it?
That's a really good point. And touching on from Tamara, I think attribution is the key in this whole model, because if we just look at our revenue and our performance purely on a last click basis, then you're effectively or essentially ignoring the whole user path. And these days, when users are researching up to 8, 12, 14 sites before committing and booking, if all of your marketing spend is attributed to the last click, and typically for big brands like Hilton, a lot of that is brand PPC, then all the activity investment you put into channels like Meta Search, TripAdvisor, the affiliate program, you're giving them zero attribution, zero gratification of what they've delivered early on in the phases. And at Hilton, although we don't have an exact science today, we do try and look across the user journey, specifically on paid search. And we have to, because we bring a lot of brand agnostic customers through generic terms who then book on brand terms. And if we don't look at the user path analysis and understand, maybe even flipping the model on a first click basis, we probably wouldn't invest as much money on those generic terms because they don't deliver anything. But the true model is trying to understand the performance of every single online marketing channel, whether that be display, your affiliate channel, email, paid search, SEO, understand the mix, try and find the behaviors of how your users engage across those channels, and then optimize effectively as possible with all that information. And I don't think no one's cracked it yet, but there's probably technologies around the corner with the integration of Dart and Google Analytics at some point in the future might make that conundrum easier to solve.
I think you both have, sorry, is the microphone on? Yeah. I think you both have touched on something which is kind of critical to crack, and although no one's cracked it, I think certain organizations are doing it quite well. One of the things that we did at MyTravel and then at Thomas Cook was we took all of our site analytical data and we merged it in with all of our advertising data, so your Atlas or your DoubleClick. Joining those two together gave you a complete understanding of your consumer and their entire interactions with you. So we tracked at a unique user level, and you could see every single interaction that consumer had with you. And then if you get a bit clever around what you put around that, and you start looking at the trends. What types of things do customers do to book? What types of words do they come in on? And you look at the full search path. You can create some algorithms which kind of help you predict which words or which activities or which channels are the ones to spend most of your money on. And when we did it originally at MyTravel, we eliminated something like 25,000 terms that were adding no value whatsoever, took all the money that was being wasted on those terms and plugged them straight into the terms that were driving real value. And I'm not talking about last click or first click here, I'm talking about assigning a value to every single interaction based on how strong that interaction was. Did the person go all the way down to look at a product? Did they just look at one page and then drop off? And when you plug in your display advertising into that, your affiliates into that, you can start making some real informed decisions about where the right places to spend your money are. Just as an example, as a result of that activity, we halved what we were paying affiliates related to customer reviews, because what we saw is the customer is going to come back and buy anyway. So paying the affiliate for showing their customer the product and then sending them back to us was just a waste of money. We halved it. We saw no loss of business. I'm not saying that the likes of TripAdvisor don't have a part to play, but as organizations, we need to understand what value they add to our business, and are they giving us new customers?
The problem, I think, is there's a lot of dogma out there, right? Everybody, you want to take a risk and you want to do something, and some traditional marketer would say, well, don't do this, it just won't work. Two examples, in two different countries, for example, we had two different opposing ideas about whether we should bid on our own key brand words or not. In one country, actually, not bidding on our brand keyword was the right thing to do. We got all the bookings from the SEO, and we didn't necessarily see a big impact. Whereas in the other one, when we reduced our spend on the brand keyword, the eBookers brand, it actually took away half of our brand bookings. So it's just a lot of dogma. I guess the way we approach it is we just don't believe anyone. We just believe we just believe in the tests. You do the tests, and if you do your numbers right, then you see what the results are, and somebody is right and somebody's wrong.
Karen, I'm just conscious that we're talking about we've got some big companies up here, and we're talking about big spend in terms of technology. Your graph, you had what were some of the fastest growth areas that you were forecasting?
Yeah, definitely online. I mean, this debate has been sort of focusing on online. It's definitely, that's where we see the future of travel. But also I would say that we still have to bear in mind that online only accounts for, between 30 and 40% of some of these markets, of these segments. So, for example, we still haven't reached over 50% penetration of hotels or of other areas in the market. So, I appreciate that, online is important and it's definitely the growing area. But there's still consumers who are resistant to buying online because of reasons of security or, losing their personal data. So just, that's one of the...
On your destinations, I think the fastest growing was China, was that it?
Oh yeah, for destinations, yes. From a small base, but yes.
I think it's quite interesting because that's quite niche, and I think we're sort of probably talking relatively mass market. So Russell, how does this, a niche operator, I'm assuming that some people in the audience aren't all national online travel agents, and how do they make this relevant on a sort of smaller cost spend and a sort of much smaller IT infrastructure?
Horses for courses, really. I think the trick is understanding who you want to put your product in front of, and understanding how what the most cost-effective way of getting your product in front of them is going to be, and then try stuff. The incredible power of the internet, whether people are buying there or whether they're just researching there and then buying somewhere else, it's real. It's happening now. You can see it, you can track it, and you can make decisions based on anything that you try. So throw it out there, see how it performs. If you're not happy with it, change it. We have the ability to do that now.
Danny, a big organisation like Hilton, are niche businesses and agents important to you?
Yeah, I think our main objective for 2010 is to drive as much business through the internet as possible, away from the OTAs. You've got a lot of natural channel shift. People who would book through the corporates or would book direct or through the call centres are migrating online. But the agents still play a role. I mean, the Expedias of this world, the OTAs of this world, who are big players, but nevertheless, they're travel agents, do play a role because we only sell hotels. And I think the important thing to note is consumers still want to dynamically package the products through one source. So we can't just turn off channels like Expedia, Orbit, Booking.com, because they are adding. It's diminishing, but they are adding value to bringing us new customers into the whole chain. So we don't discriminate against them, even though I would like to spend more money directly through our brand website and trying to erode their business as much as possible, but that's just going to take time.
So, okay, well, that's your objective for the future, Danny. So, and Caroline, what do you see as the sort of big challenges coming forward in the industry?
Well, obviously the consumer trend to trading down, so the move towards budget, whether it's low cost or budget hotels, mid-priced hotels. So that's something that we'll see definitely continue for the next couple of years. And that obviously has a bearing on sort of the luxury space and how hoteliers in particular cope with that. And we're actually seeing a shift as well away from conspicuous consumption luxury to more eco-chic luxury and green luxury. So I think consumers are, they've got a conscience and they want to buy ethically. So again, that's something that we're picking up at Euromonter.
And Russell, on the E-strategy side?
The bottom line for me is I think things are changing really, really fast, and it's about being at the forefront of that change and making it work right, in the right way for your organisation. Take advantage of the technology that's coming out. There's some good stuff out there.
Yeah. What's on eBooker's mind?
I'd say two things. One of them I already talked about, which is the emotional engagement with the customer, because I picked up the fast and slow approach, and you want to make sure that the boring administrative stuff that you have to do on the site gets done fast, such as the booking, the credit card, and going from one step to the other. Nobody likes that. That has to get done fast. But the stuff that needs to get slow is the engagement part of it. Yeah. When you look for hotels, when you go through the photographs, the beautiful slideshows, all those things. So the content side of it is where we're spending time on to be able to emotionally engage with the customer, as well as the chat functionality. Now, the other part of it is a value proposition. When you go to any site right now, it's never clear to you what that site stands for. It's lots of boxes, lots of colors and taglines, but one of the things we're working on in eBookers is to make sure that when someone comes to our site, it is absolutely clear what we stand for and the evidence behind it. Yeah. So people should know, for example, whether your prices are inclusive or not. A lot of people don't know that until they come to the end and have to pay credit card fees. Mm. So things like that, we just want to make it clearer for 2010.
Danny, apart from taking the OTAs down at the knees, anything a little bit more upbeat?
Yeah, I think one interesting area of development is the Google social social search, so having social media content now within your search results. And I think that's one area to watch, how third parties and search engines start to integrate more content from the social media networks. And I think that's really one to watch, because social media is exploding, you know, faster than anyone ever could believe, with Facebook having like the number one site globally. It's quite actually and one endearing, because us as an audience, you know, the only place that we're going to win or lose these battles sometimes in terms of decision in the future is going to be through the social networks, and how people then add value and start and end conversations through these networks.
Great. Okay, I think we're out of time there, but everyone will be around lured by the alcohol later, so please feel free to come up and ask any questions. But ladies and gentlemen of the panel, thank you.